Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to, once again, another Peace Palace Library lecture. We had one already last week. That was a very special one on Grootjes, but I'm sure the one of today will become as special as the one of last Thursday. And I think more in particular, for we have those two excellent speakers. One from Rome and one from The Hague. This Peace Palace Library lecture of today on cultural heritage, to summarize, is more or less an extension of what we have experienced in the afternoon. The Huizinga Institute Summer School on the cultures of war and peace has started at around 2 o'clock and will continue till Wednesday afternoon. But today there were three speeches, 3 talks by 3 distinguished professors, Professor Jim Winter, on writing war, and he was focusing, to be brief, on the word glory, gloire, and thereafter Professor Selma Levensdorf, who is a very well-known professor in oral history, spoke about the narrative in the courtroom, focusing on Srebrenica. And Professor Frank van Vee, perhaps one of the best professors in the Netherlands on film and history, spoke about screening wars in the 20th century. The 2 following lectures are being organized by the Peace Palace Library in full cooperation with the Netherlands UNESCO. And I'm very grateful that the Dutch UNESCO Bureau has so much helped us, the Peace Palace Library, in finding speakers, registering persons, canvassing for today, and most in particular, of course, Spitz. Thank you very much. And André Imhoff, while Koosje was traveling in Africa. And the 2 of them have really worked together, and their director, Robert Farkas-Nunnefort, has also assisted by allocating those 2 employees to this endeavor. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have seen, once again, we witnessed again in the last year, damaging of cultural heritage in Mali. And this may be one of the elements that's going to be addressed by Aparna Tandon. She will take the floor within a couple of minutes. Pastor Haar, he is going to speak about a new objective of UNESCO. In the past, we have very much associated UNESCO with education, science, culture, but Irina Bokova, the current Director General, has formulated a new objective, being peace. Peace as an objective of UNESCO. And we may hear his feelings about this new objective. First, we'll have the lecture by Aparna Tandon, and then by Pastor Haar. And my plan was to have the questions and answers moment after we have heard both of them speaking. May I invite now Aparna Tandon to the floor. She is a staff member of the International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property in Rome. Please.
Thank you, and good evening. I would first like to thank the Peace Palace Library and UNESCO Netherlands for inviting me here to represent ICROM, and I'm very happy that we got the name of my organization out of the way. It's rather vague. So, thank you. Okay, so, let's start. Many of you, this picture of Umayyad Mosque, it's a famous Sunni mosque, built between 8th and 13th century and located in the whole city of Aleppo, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it must be a familiar, at least to some of you, it must be a familiar picture because it hit the headlines in April of 2013. Large sections of this mosque were destroyed in the fighting between the rebel groups and the President Assad's forces. And one of the, I'm trying to, okay, the minarets, you get the point, minarets there. It's an 11th century minaret, so reportedly the oldest surviving part of the mosque, which was destroyed, as you can see in this picture, completely. Both sides, the rebel groups and the regime of the President Assad, blamed each other for intentionally or for deliberately targeting this Sunni mosque. Well, deliberate targeting of heritage to raise hostility now seems to be an accepted part of our warfare in these internal armed conflicts that we have been witnessing since the end of the Cold War. Nonetheless, there are many questions related to these occurrences which are being widely debated in the world of academia, but they are poorly understood as well as articulated and factored into our policies and measures on the ground. The first and the foremost question is, why is cultural heritage being targeted? Why is it a target? And it is deeply interrelated with what is cultural heritage and what happens to it in times of conflict. How does it change? What is its relationship with conflicts? And especially these identity-based conflicts. The answers to these questions will take us to the next set of issues and questions. Is it possible to secure heritage amid violent conflict? And if yes, who ought to take it? Well, I don't have the complete answers, but my recent work and being from a conflict-afflicted area, that's Jammu and Kashmir in India, has given me some insights that I would like to share with you through this podium. Heritage, if we go by today's standards, it's become almost ubiquitous in the sense like everything is heritage. And by UNESCO terms, it encompasses the tangible as well as intangible human cultural expressions, memory, past, identity, and it's a vast term. But in simple terms, it is natural or cultural legacy of the past, something that I could inherit from my family, let's say, like a photograph here. But believe me, this is not my family photograph. There is no family resemblance here. It's just something that I picked up. Okay, so, but when this simple notion of my heritage, something that I inherited, is associated with collective memory and identity, it can potentially lead to conflicts. And here I present you an example from my own native Jammu and Kashmir. What you see on screen is the ruins of the Dogra palaces. The Hindu ruler, the Maharaja of a Muslim majority state, commissioned these palaces. After independence, these palaces were turned into public offices. And since then, from 1960 to 2010, these palaces have had 36 fire incidents. All successive governments in Jammu and Kashmir which is a conflict-affected state, have been reluctant to allocate resources to this heritage, which to many in the state seems to be a symbol of an oppressive regime. But what we are neglecting here is that, in fact, the Maharaja may have commissioned these palaces, but these palaces were built by nameless artisans, hundreds of them, who have made beautiful Khatamban ceilings, which are, amalgam of Hindu and Muslim architecture, and many other influences are there. So, what I'm trying to say, in other words, is that when we say that heritage belongs to a particular group, we deny its inclusive nature. It's a blend. And we exclude some other groups. And to a great extent, this narrow classification is done by the so-called heritage experts, and I belong to that community. So I guess I take the blame also. Let's look at another example. And this is an example where I had the opportunity to work with a former trainee of ICROM who had organized a course, and we were doing risk assessment on this World Heritage Site of UNESCO, which is in Lebanon. It's the site of Tyre, and it's at the border. And it suffered some minor damages during the Israeli attack of 2006. Next to the site, and this is not a very nice picture, but this is why I wanted to show you. Sorry. Maybe you can see in the background, I'm not very good with this. Next to the site is these Israeli houses. This is a Palestinian settlement. And people living there have been reportedly vandalizing the site. They throw garbage, and they have been stealing, or there have been reported thefts. That's what we were told by the custodians of the site. So people have this uneasy relationship, and in reaction to that, the management feels that if there is another attack on this site, there could be a conflict. There could be unrest, social unrest, and the site could be looted. And to mitigate that risk, they are erecting big fences, and they're making their storages, which has the archaeological finds from the site, very secure. So that's the answer of a technical answer to a social problem. However, if we take a closer look at the several issues these residents face in fulfilling their basic needs of food, water, sanitation, electricity, it would seem that not having access to the site or not being part of its development is deepening the divides along ethno-religious lines. And it is crystallizing into inequalities that are, cutting horizontally across ethnicity, religion, as well as economic status. And this, according to a World Bank Development Report of 2011 on conflict, is one of the biggest factors for outbreak of violence in any fragile country situation. So we have to see how heritage can also deepen divides and lead to conflict. And by not giving access to it, or selectively not making people part of its development, can also be a risk factor. On the other hand, certain heritages emerge out of conflicts. Again, this photo may be familiar to many of you, and this is of a Palestinian woman holding out the key of her house, the house that she lost as a result of displacement. The key has acquired a new meaning in among the displaced Palestinian community. Wherever they are living as refugees, keys are the only physical evidence of what they own, and is the only surviving connection with the land that they once belonged to. And many contemporary artists have taken taken this up, and there was also a show in Berlin on by a Palestinian artist. He made a huge key as it was his expression. And so what I want to say here is that conflict destroys, but it also creates heritages. And elsewhere in the world, wherever we see memories, shrines, or wherever we see war museums and all, and today it must have been discussed in the afternoon, in this conference, that heritage also gets made as part of the narratives come out of the war as a result of this violent social upheaval. Yet, in most crisis situations, heritage also provides a sense of continuity. Something that I learned most humbly through this colleague of mine, who's a Haitian, who lost many of her family members in the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, and she chose to bring back this voodoo flag from the rubble of her house because this voodoo flag gives her a sense of continuity, a sense of hope, a sense of future for Haiti, for her countrymen, for her clan. And when she came to us, we were holding a training. This flag was uppermost in her mind, and she wanted us to restore it at all costs. Another strong example is from Mali, and my colleague who has the first-hand experience from this class friend, Deborah, is sitting here among the audience, where families that have traditionally held the manuscripts from Timbuktu managed to keep them safe despite threats of violence. And thus, with these examples, I would like to underscore that heritage is not a neutral concept. Its narrow interpretation, its selective recognition can lead to conflicts. It is also not a static concept. It is a dynamic concept. It changes, it transforms as a result of violent conflict. And it is this sensitivity, it's this awareness of the nature of heritage that we have to bring in our policies and measures when we try to secure it in times of conflict. Now, having said that, let's look at how UNESCO's 1954 Hague Convention for the protection of cultural property and its 1999 protocol help protect cultural property on the ground. And I say cultural property because it is about physical entities. It's about libraries, collections, sites, groups of monuments that the convention covers. It does not cover intangible heritage. But this convention, we have to be aware, was made in the backdrop of the Second World War, when entire cities were destroyed. And the principle of respect for other people's cultural property that it enshrines has also become part of the international customary law. So that's an achievement. However, it relies on state parties who are both signatories and have ratified the convention to ensure certain peacetime measures, preparedness measures, and they have to kick in the times of war. It's a simple formula. But after the war in former Yugoslavia and also the Second Gulf War, it was realized that this convention had limitations and it was not addressing certain war crimes. It was not looking at internal armed conflicts. And in 1999, the second protocol, an extension was brought in, which was meant to update the Hague Convention And this protocol indeed brought in many measures. For example, it detailed more preparedness measures. It gave detailed outline what are the punishable crimes. However, there are some limitations. Fewer states have accepted the 1999 protocol, even though it updates the older one, the 1954 convention. Awareness and implementation at national level are thus ongoing issues of the 1954 Hague Convention. I won't get into many details about it. We can discuss it later on in the question and answer session. Both the convention and the protocol, as I said before, do not cover damage to intangible heritage like the loss of knowledge system, craft traditions, etc. Similarly, the convention does not cover harmful propaganda that perpetrates destruction of cultural heritage. Furthermore, it is said that 1999 convention does outline, the crimes of punishable crimes against cultural property if you're intentionally harming cultural property, which is under enhanced protection. But I again draw your attention to the Umayyad Mosque, where both sides are contesting. Both sides are saying the other one destroyed it. How will you bring them to this house of justice? Who will collect the evidence? How will this happen? It's a question that I don't have an answer to. So, this is about conventions. This is about physical measures that we have. And there is this idea of foreign assistance from outside. But that is but one aspect of cultural heritage protection in times of conflict, as we have seen in previous conflicts such as Norway. However, we need to have people on the ground to respond to cultural emergencies, people from within the country. Again, the Mali example is there. And that is why ICROM came up with this idea of first aid to cultural heritage in times of conflict. And we decided to hold these 3 courses as an experiment. We were lucky and we were fortunate to receive the financial help of the Ministry of Culture, of the Italian Ministry of Culture. The idea was, our objective was to create and prepare proactive cultural first aiders who are from the country, who are not from outside, but are from the country, and who can think about this dimension of culture and conflict and how cultural heritage gets destroyed in times of conflict, and who have the ability to respond in crisis situations, who can move quickly to secure cultural heritage amidst violent conflicts. And of course, they have to be aware of their security and safety and intervene at the right moment. 56 participants from 54 countries took part in this training, in these 3 sessions that we had in 2010, 2011, 2012. And many of them were not from the star conflicts. I say star conflicts because normally we talk about Syria, Afghanistan, and there are some conflicts which are very topical, and there are some conflicts that are totally forgotten. And we had people from Latin America, we had people from many parts of the world that we were not so aware of, and it was a learning experience. They were from diverse cultural as well as professional backgrounds. Some of them were architects, archaeologists, curators, humanitarians. Some of them also, few of them from armed forces, but mostly from the field of cultural heritage, or people who were working in NGOs on the ground. The course was set in a complex emergency context. we had the whole training was made in that context of a protracted conflict, breakdown of authority, security risk, looting, displacement, in short, multifaceted humanitarian crisis. One of the major aspects was conflict analysis, and this is something that we borrowed from the field of political science, peace and conflict studies, and participants brought their own case studies from their own countries, and we studied the relationship that heritage has with conflict. And this was a very rich fair, and as a result of this, we have even come out with a book. There were skills for working with communities and mediation and negotiation, and again, we borrowed, this is not normally in a conservation, cultural heritage conservation training, so we borrowed this idea, and also we got experts from outside the field. Working with other actors, speaking their language, speaking the language of the military, looking at their interests, humanitarians, we were also concerned about that. So that was part of our real-life simulation-based training, but we brought in professionals from these fields to talk to our participants and to discuss their compulsions. Blue Shield is a forgotten, almost forgotten Red Cross equivalent organization of cultural heritage protection. To strengthen the work of Blue Shield in the field, we invited people from national committees of the Blue Shield to talk to our participants and to open such NGOs in their own countries, to open the national committees of Blue Shield, and this was an important part of our training. We also included international humanitarian law and domestic legislation. Here I would like to say, which I did not cover earlier, was that as part of our training, we also explored this debate about cultural heritage as a human right. So bringing rights-based approach to cultural heritage protection, especially to intangible heritage, could be the answer. And we had several debates about this, and something should be done about this seriously within the field and should be taken further. Responding to complex emergencies, rescuing art, securing art and looking at diverse types of artifacts. This was also part of the training, and this was in fact rather a big portion of the training. How would you secure art with very few supplies, different types of cultural heritage with very little, sometimes you have nothing in war zones, so you have to be creative, and that was a big focus of our training. Combining humanitarian aid and culture, observing neutrality. I won't go into the story because I don't have the time. This is again from Kashmir, and this is a mosque which it's a shrine which got burnt and was turned into a mosque, architecturally speaking, and it was done by experts, under the supervision of experts. So sometimes we change the form and function and meaning of cultural heritage without even meaning to. So whose side you are on? Don't always take the side of the most powerful person in the conflict. Again, working with the humanitarians and tapping into the UN humanitarian structure, because culture is totally out of this structure. Only education has an entry point. Culture for peace, not only looking at monumental heritage, but building the confidence of the people and conserving people's heritage, something that is close to their heart, something that will bring them livelihoods, and perhaps then you can work in a hostile area to let them, to bring them around the idea of conserving the heritage of the other. So this was also a very big part of this training. Outcomes, as I said earlier, were an online publication with the case studies of the participants. We had several follow-up activities. Thanks to the Prince Claus Fund, the first aiders were supported in the field, and there were follow-up first aid trainings in Egypt, Lebanon, Colombia, Iran, and Somalia. We also had a collaboration with ECOMOS, and in the middle of the war, in January 2003, we did an e-course with the DGAM, the Directorate General of Antiquities and Museums. and we have been asked to do another course, which could be controversial, but for now our focus in these courses was purely technical, how to prepare for the impending war. That was like how to secure your heritage, what to do, damage assessments, things like that, building shelters. This experience has been very rich, and we've had several issues. One of them is identifying the right kind of people who are working on the ground and trying to take this training further because the funding finished. So there are many issues, and we are still evaluating what are the lessons learned. But the biggest lesson learned is that culture cannot wait. It is an underlayer of all humanitarian work, and it is essential for peace building, and it should not be left behind until normalcy is restored. So do not be preoccupied with security, safe culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. We'll postpone questions to later on, so keep in mind everything you want to say about the biggest lesson learned, the controversy between heritage that is a risk factor and can deepen problems, and conflicts that can also create heritage. Thank you as well for canvassing for the blue sheet, I'm the blue shield member. Haar is a former UNESCO, Dutch ambassador to UNESCO, and is currently a scholar at Instituut Clinical, the Dutch Research Institute for Foreign Relations. And his slides are there. Please.
Thank you. Peace. Peace to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Or maybe you prefer to say good evening, because few words are so often and so easily misused as the word peace. Take the Pax Romana. It was a kind of peace. But for the people that did not accept Roman authority, this peace meant war. When a government is telling you, I bring you peace, it often means peace on our terms. And that might mean war. And how seriously should we take the support of the member states of the United Nations for declaring 2000 the International Year for the Culture of Peace, and 2001 to 2010 as the International Decade for the Culture of Peace and Non-Violence for the Children of the World? Has it made any of these governments more peaceful? It is therefore not surprising that many people are somewhat cynical about the concept of the culture of peace. However, I believe that we should be neither cynical nor naive about the culture of peace. I suggest a third approach. I suggest we should be realistic, but without forgetting our ambitions. And that brings me to the essence of my presentation, that consists of 3 points. First, culture of peace is a concept that should be taken seriously. 2, UNESCO's current program for a culture of peace is, in my view, not realistic. And 3, we should choose a different approach, which is both realistic and ambitious. So first, is a culture of peace a concept we should take seriously? The weak point is that we have no precise definition of what culture of peace means. But I will give you 2 quotes that in my view will make clear what is meant. Exactly a century ago, in June 1913, the British periodical, The Economist, wrote about tendencies which are slowly but surely making war between the civilized communities of the world an impossibility. This thinking, I think, was the thinking of culture of peace. For anybody at that time who had thought about the issue, it was clear that the war between the large European powers would be very costly and would solve very little. So, why did the First World War start? The short answer would be because the lack of the culture of peace. Look at the Peel, the rectors of the Bavarian universities made their students on the 4th of August 1914. Students, and this is something you cannot imagine anymore as a student that the rector of the university would say nowadays. But it's I think, very significant. Students, the news are silent. The issue is battle. The battle forced upon us for German culture, which is threatened by barbarians from the east, and for German values, which the enemy in the west envies. And so the furor Teutonicus bursts into flame once again. The enthusiasm of wars of liberation flares, and the holy war begins. Obviously, it sounds better in German. Both in France and England and in Germany, the support for going into war was so widespread that politicians that should have known better rather started the war than lose elections because of a pacifistic stand. The conclusion I draw from this is that although it's not a sufficient precondition for peace, the culture of peace can be a very important factor. We will now have a look at UNESCO's action program for a culture of peace. It forms part of UNESCO's program and budget for the years 2012 and 2013. And I apologize if my slides are not as nice as for my predecessor, although the buildings were all somewhat still a nice picture. I have only words. But I think it's important to have a close look at what UNESCO is doing or putting in its plans. If I may, I make a slight correction, because that it's not a new subject for UNESCO peace and the culture of peace. It's older than that. I won't go into that. I will go into the details of the program for last year and this year. This program consists of 7 main objectives, 7 main areas of action, and 6 flagship activities. And I will quote them as literal as possible, but because they are quite lengthy, I will present them in an abbreviated form, leaving out most of the details. We will start with the main objectives. 1. A global movement in favor of a culture of peace. 2. Improve the world's global understanding and deconstruct preconceived ideas. 3. Commitment by states to nurture everyday peace. 4. Guidelines for a global curriculum to foster a culture of peace. 5. Raise awareness about violence. 6. Strengthen links between intercultural dialogue and cultural diversity. And 7. Identify or create hubs of peace building. And then 7 main areas of action that I propose. Improvement of access to education with emphasis on human rights and health. 2. Greater opportunities for research and public debates, illustrating cultural exchanges. Promotion of the role of creativity. And 4. Contribution of the media to change the perception of different cultures. Recognition of knowledge which contributes to biodiversity, sustainable development, human rights, philosophy, and intercultural dialogue. 6. Education program to stop violence in schools. And 7. Learning from the past, promote dialogue for reconciliation. And then flagship activities. developed and managed by the sectoral platform, like main areas of action, didn't say that, also to be coordinated and developed by the platform for cultural peace. I'll come back to this platform later. Practical activities. 1. Develop a global consciousness to overcome national fixations and to redefine our relationship as a nation. 2. Create a digital library on major scientific and cultural landmarks. 3. Develop e-notebooks on peace and intercultural dialogue. 4. Promote education for a culture of peace. 5. Promote high-profile events such as exhibitions and prizes. And 6. Set up an interactive e-portal as a unique place of dialogue and mutual understanding. All these objectives, main areas of action and flagship activities, I would argue, all sound quite attractive. But how realistic are they? Let us have a slightly closer look at one example of each category. And we start with the first flagship activity. Develop a global consciousness. Develop a global consciousness, and again, it's an abridged form, it's somewhat more than I said before. Global consciousness to overcome national fixations, ethnic narrow narratives, and instrumental ways of perceiving the world, and to redefine our relationship as a nation. This activity will be developed and managed by an intersectoral platform, like the other 5 flagship activities. Now please think about it for these 2 seconds. How is this platform going to manage the development of a global consciousness? Now take the first area of action. Improvement of access to education. Again, very fundamental proposal. Improvement of access to formal and non-formal education with emphasis on quality education for all, education on human rights, cultural diversity, gender equality, and the integration of marginalized groups. In particular attention will be paid to provision of textbooks and improvement of learning materials, especially in history, using the UNESCO Associated Schools Project Network as an outreach possibility, support online exchanges in order to help stop violence, develop teacher training handbooks on new intercultural competences, and support exchange on education for peace, human rights, and tolerance. In this area of action, again, we developed and coordinated via an intersectoral platform, like the other 6 areas of action. And please consider for a moment what it will take to revise history textbooks, which one part of it. Let us finally have a look at the 4th objective. To establish guidelines for a global curriculum which foster a culture of peace, promote humanism and intercultural competences, and are conducive to a practice of cardinal virtues, temperance, courage, wisdom and justice, as well as of empathy, hospitality, harmonious coexistence, and appreciation of diversity. This objective will be pursued through concrete progress. Can you imagine how much time and political capital it would cost to establish these guidelines for a global curriculum? A few of the platform's objectives, areas of action, and activities are of more manageable proportions, but most of them are just as ambitious as these 3. And please remember 2 things. He is speaking about global tasks, a global consciousness, global access to education, and a global curriculum. And this is the work program for 2012-2013, not the work program for 2030. Let us now look at available means to implement all these plans. In the regular budget, 2013, an amount of 7 million was allocated for activities of 6 sectoral platforms. Apart from cultural peace, cover climate change, the fight against AIDS, countries in post-conflict and post-disaster situations, sustainable development of small islands, and Africa, a special priority for UNESCO. When we spread the available money evenly over these 6 platforms and the 20 platforms' objectives, areas of action and activities, it would leave $30,000 for each item. Now you might argue that extra budgetary expense might cover the costs. But who's going to provide these funds for activities as they, as developing the global consciousness, without a concrete plan what should be done and how much that would cost? Then the available personnel. To support the intersectoral platform on the culture of peace and non-violence, a implementation unit of 4 people is available. However, like all the members of these intersectoral platforms, they fulfill this task in addition to a regular task in the Secretariat. The head of this unit and the manager and coordinator of this intersectoral platform, for example, fulfills this function in addition to her official function of Director of the Division of Cultural Policies and Intercultural Dialogue within the Department of Culture. Now, the question is, what results do you expect of such a very ambitious work program if there's almost no money available, nor sufficient staff? For an answer to that question, you might have a look at the official website of UNESCO, and in particular at the web page about upcoming conferences and events under the heading Culture of Peace and Non-Violence. If any concrete steps would be taken to implement this work program, one would expect that the Secretariat would have noticed that on this website. But when I checked the website this morning, the text of the page was as follows. First you have to read it all aloud, but you will notice that today, on the official website in the sectoral panel, there are only mentioned some upcoming events in 2012. Of course, this is just the official website, not the official report. And of course, we still have half a year to go before the end of UNESCO's work program for 2012 and 2013. But let us not fool ourselves. Half a year before the end of the biennium, 2012-2013, implementation of the ambitious program that I've read partly about to you has not been seriously started. And it's very unlikely that will happen in the next 6 months. So why does the Secretariat propose a work program that it cannot implement? And why do member states agree to such a work program? I fear there is only one possible answer, and that is because so far neither the Secretariat nor most member states have taken the culture of peace seriously. It would require a different lecture to explain how member states and Secretariat developed what I would call an unholy alliance in which Secretariat pretends it can take over a number of the responsibilities of member states, and the member states pretend to believe that. This unholy alliance covers many more subjects, but the culture of peace is one of the best examples, because here the enormous gap between ambitions and achievements is so obvious. Nevertheless, should immediately add that even here the picture is not completely black and white. The UNESCO Secretariat plays a useful role in supporting civil society activities. And there are also many civil society activities under the UNESCO commissions and UNESCO clubs all over the world, such as, for instance, the UNESCO Associated Schools project in the Netherlands, that play a useful role in establishing or strengthening the culture of peace. And again, as I told you before, I believe it's very important for this civil action to support the culture of peace. The importance of that I will not lay down, but it is very little in comparison to this official program that you saw before. So what to do? I have 5 suggestions. First, we should recognize the importance of the culture of peace. The culture of peace is, in my view, a culture of solidarity with and respect for other groups of people, a culture of dialogue and reconciliation. These are no easy matters, but they are essential to overcome hostility and discourse and to lay the basis for real peace. Because peace is not just something for governments. But living in peace is a great prerogative. It would be very stupid to think that we have entered an era of eternal peace, and that we will remain there without any serious effort. Active support for peace and for a culture of peace that remains crucial. But we should be realistic about what a culture of peace can accomplish here. In matters of war and peace, the role of governments remains essential. And we should recognize that this way to deal with peace is often indirect way. It's nice to speak about global consciousness, but it's very difficult to do anything about that. And in my view, if UNESCO really, not just rhetorically, wants to contribute to global peace, the best it can do is to fulfill its functions in the fields of education, science, culture and communication. For example, by making sure that everybody in the world gets appropriate education, that the results of scientific research are used for the benefit of mankind, and that natural and cultural heritage are respected and protected. But to do that, the responsibility for these tasks will have to, in my view, to be given back to the member states. And that requires a radical change in the way UNESCO works. As I gave an example here, the tendency is to ask the Secretariat to take care of it. And again, this is a very clear example. There is no way that this panel doing it partly in the time left next to other jobs will be able to fulfill this big program. If we want UNESCO to fulfill its task, really, it's member states that will have to accept their responsibility for education for all and for a proper use of science. They will have to recognize that these responsibilities cannot be delegated to the Secretariat. Finally, the work program of the Secretariat should, in my view, be brought back to credible proportions. The main responsibility for promoting the culture of peace by ensuring that everybody in the world receives proper education is in the hands of the member states. The primary role of the Secretariat is to support and facilitate the member states in this. In short, durable peace should be a priority for everybody. The promotion of a culture of peace therefore deserves our support. But it's not a panacea, and it should certainly not be tracked from UNESCO's primary responsibilities in the fields of education, science, culture and communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Haar. May I invite Aparna Tandon to the desk over here, and you as well, Officer Haar, for another 50 minutes or so for questions and answers.